This week on the Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
Mike believes he's favored to overcome you.
Yeah, that's right. That's what he said. So I agree, actually, with him. But we'll see.
Dang it, Kyle. I picked you in my bracket. Don't let me down.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a podcast focused on tactics and competitive play for Star Wars Legion. Hosted by Kyle Dornbos, Michael Barry, and David Zelenka, with Jay Shalansky, the man behind the glass.
Hello and welcome back to Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
You got it right. Well done.
I've been practicing. I've been sitting here in front of my microphone. How now, brown cow?
You can't see us, but we all cheered silently.
Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and David. How you guys doing?
What's up?
Doing good, man.
So we're going to talk about a couple things today. Later in the show, we have the illustrious Davis Kingsley on to talk about his Invader League list and how to tauntaun. We've talked a lot about tauntauns, but it occurs to us that we've never actually talked about how to use them effectively. So we're going to have Davis on to talk about that. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about droidicas, which we've postponed, like 4 times now? Probably.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, in our defense, we've been talking about other separatist things sprinkled in there. But yeah, we're actually going to talk about droidicas today. And then I'm going to talk super briefly about my Invader League list, and you guys can roast me for various reasons on that. So.
Yep. Fun fact, it does not include Jyn Erso. Sorry, Facebook.
Yeah, sorry, Facebook. Yeah, I just need to know.
He wasn't going to take Jyn Erso anyway.
The reason that I did a poll was because
Kyle's a liar.
You know, there's this psychological concept that like if you flip a coin or do a poll or something, it tells you what you really want, right? So I couldn't really decide. I thought Jyn would be interesting. Facebook picked Jyn, and then I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to play Jyn because I don't.
Just to be clear, everybody, he decided that instead of flipping a coin, he was going to publicly ask everybody what they wanted him to play, and then disappoint us all.
That's accurate.
Okay, great. I'm glad.
So what you're saying is the poll result let you know what the wrong choice was.
Well, it let me know what I really wanted to do, which was
not play Jyn Erso.
Yeah, I've got a total of like 2 games with Jyn. So
he doesn't even know if she's bad or not. That's what he's trying to say.
Yeah, he's only played 2 games with her. How can he know?
That's true. And I know I did an entirely new faction cold last Invader League, but I'm this time feel like just should play something I'm a little more comfortable with. So
you're not quite as confident that Jyn can duplicate the result you had with Bosk. So
something like that. In all seriousness, I actually think Jyn is pretty good against Empire. Simply, yeah.
The struggle to find a word there was great.
Yeah,
Empire.
No, look, she's especially like in a Jedi Luke list. This is why I thought of her in the first place in this context, because in a Jedi Luke list, you've got to take a commander, right? Rebel officer is bad. So your choice is basically rebel officer plus like a Z6 or something else that costs roughly 60 points, or Jyn. And Jyn has a better courage. She has a very good, decent range 3 gun with Pierce. And she's a pain in the butt on objectives. So, you know, if you essentially say that like the 50 points you're paying for rebel officers like dead, you know, straight up tax, you know, you're basically paying 60 points for Jyn in that context.
I don't know. I think that, you know, we haven't seen R2-D2 and C-3PO hit the table yet, but the Rebel officer is not that much different than R2-D2, C-3PO, and a operative Luke list.
Yeah, I mean, he can't score the secret mission objective.
Sure.
And, you know, you don't get that aim token unless you give him, like, Binox or something.
But, like, the whole reason that you're taking that action in the first place is to give him the dodge token. Like, the aim token is just, like, a nice benefit.
Yeah.
You can have me hot take the rebel officer next week if you want, because I have opinions on the subject.
Let's
as well.
do it.
Yeah. All right.
Tune in next week.
He has an art. He has an alt art.
He does.
It does.
He does.
All right, so
that recommends him for
the Rebel Officer in my list. I decided that I wanted to run Jedi Luke because I've been wanting to run Jedi Luke forever. Now I can do that. So I picked Jedi Luke. I gave him push, saber throw, and Jedi mind trick. I took a Rebel Officer because you have to take a commander. I took 5 Z6s, an FD turret. So I did do that Facebook, got that part.
Kyle keeps his promises. Man.
And 3 snipers because every list I make has 3 snipers in it.
Do you ever tell your kids that you're like taking them to Disney World and then you like take them to the playground instead, and we're like, oh well, we're gonna go play someplace fun,
No, my daughter is only 3, but she's extremely good at keeping me accountable. She'll remember like days later if I say that we're going to do something and we don't. So
okay, all right.
And she will let you know that she's unhappy about it. So,
well, I'm unhappy about it.
Jay says at least someone does. Brutal. Well, I didn't tell my 3-year-old daughter I was going to play Jyn Erso, so
that makes it better, clearly.
That makes it a lot better.
Yeah, it's we'll see. It's I actually don't feel super great about the list. It's a little bit of an experiment to see if I can handle the big bads, short gun lines and triple tauntauns with what is basically a more traditional Rebel list, but with Jedi Luke instead of Commander Luke.
Yeah, I mean, the reason you feel like not so great about it is because it's probably worse than if Jyn was in it.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with you, but it's definitely something that I'm more used to. So,
well,
at the end of the day, I chose what I was comfortable with.
You took one support option in the Rebel faction. I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, tauntauns and rotaries are good. But I want to be a little different, I guess. And, true to myself, which is what I ended up picking. So
reports of the FD cannon's demise are greatly exaggerated.
Oh, the FD cannon is great.
Yeah, there's no question.
Yeah, range 5 FD is awesome.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
It really does.
Your list. I don't know, dude. Why don't you go over it? Why don't you just hit it?
I just did. It's
he just did.
Yeah.
All right. In totality, or was I just like so rage focused on the fact that you lied to us?
I think you saw red there for a little bit.
Yeah, I hit all of it. Yeah.
I always see red. All right, fine.
Yeah, it's a defensive, traditional, like Rebel gun line basically with Jedi Luke. So we'll see. I got 3 range 5 options. I'm actually more worried about tauntauns than I am about Empire lists with shores. Depending on what terrain looks like, of course. But at least if I got some line of sight blockers up there, my hope is I can get Jedi Luke in the mix and wreck some stuff. So the list is definitely going to succeed or fail on the back of Jedi Luke's lightsaber, that's for sure. More so than even a traditional like Wonder Twins Commander Luke list. But I love me some Jedi Luke. He's got 6 command cards to work with now, and I'm comfortable with him. So
I'm glad you're comfortable, Kyle.
Yeah. It's gonna be fun. It's a list that I enjoy playing. So hopefully,
when you put down the shovel and talk about Droidicus,
yeah, hopefully I'll get to play it for more than one game. Yeah, let's talk about Droidicus.
It's time for Legion 101. Classes in session.
Yeah, so Droidicus, they're the only support choice for separatists. They're quite solid. We used them in our sort of, what was this, 2 episodes ago now? Our Clone Wars.
Why do you gotta keep bringing this up? I don't understand.
Hey, we're talking about Droidicus. That's the last time we did Droidicus. So
last time they They were beating up some clones pretty good with those suppressive guns.
So you guys are both essentially clones players.
Mike's like, this interview is over.
So I'm gonna be honest. Yes, I'm a clones player, I guess. However, I've been putting together those battle droids, and man, I might be switching sides here.
You mean so? Are you talking about the experience of putting together the battle droids, or how they look, or what?
Both, all of the above. I actually enjoyed putting the battle droids together, very much. I miss sprues a lot. I miss customization. I miss all that jazz. Not to get too far off the topic of droid.
Take that, Legion community.
No, yeah. I think this is slightly on topic because I know that the battle droids are very polarizing as far as assembly is concerned. So please continue.
I will say that the droidecas, since we're talking about them, were less fun, and that's because they weren't really. So they're on sprues, but they're not super customizable. Like their guns and everything were just the way that they are put together. There's no real joints that you can kind of mess with to make them look kind of funky or weird. Like the arms aren't like posable at all. It's kind of all on one chassis, which is fine. Like, don't get me wrong, the models look sweet. So I'm not really complaining, but I did enjoy the B1s a lot more. And Grievous is dope.
Yep. How'd you build your Grievous?
My Grievous has 4 lightsabers and a cloak, which, if you look really close, looks a little bit wonky. But I've got 2 more Grievouses to put together, so I'll, put together one that actually fits together. Like the cloak doesn't actually fit on the model tightly if you put 4 lightsabers on them, but I don't think it's that big a deal. But in any case, it was super fun, and I am probably going to play CIS a lot more than I thought it was.
Yeah, they're really fun. And yeah, when I saw the hard plastic, that was actually the single thing that sold me on them, and made me excited about them. So
yeah, I've got a horde of B1 battle droids next to me, and I'm like looking at them, and I'm like, all right, this is the army I actually want to play.
Yep. So yeah, they look great. So yeah, those droidicas, they have a 6 dice pool if you have both of them, 4 black, 2 red. No surge. So it's a pool with a lot of like high quality dice in it, some of which are going to miss. And also they don't have surge. So let's talk about real quick what upgrades to give them. They only have 1 slot that you can use.
Yeah, I think it's linked targeting array, and it's not close.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
I could see some situations where you might want uplink, but link targeting array is cheaper, and you can usually manage. You can put your uplinks on your B1s and then just give your orders to your droidicas. We've talked about how to do this. Jay talked about it actually in an article about separatists, and then if you watch our battle report, which I'm sure I haven't mentioned yet, but you can see me doing this also. And proccing link targeting.
You all can't see me, but I have the eyes of a Sith Lord boring into Kyle's skull right now.
Yeah, you can get him orders on most turns, even if you have to like have Grievous in the bag by himself to get them orders. Like on your push turn, for example, you've got 2 orders. Give those 2 orders to the decas. Uplink your B1s and then throw Grievous in the bag by himself just to proc that link targeting array. You can manage link targeting array on 4 out of 6 turns, basically.
Yeah,
which is definitely enough for those 5 points.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like right now we've just got like commanders for CIS. If there's ever like a list that has an operative in it, you probably either don't want to take droidecas or don't want to take LTAs, linked targeting arrays on them. But like it's pretty easy, like even on the 1-pip turns, to just have droidecas in your bag. So
right.
It's also not that difficult to aim shoot with them, right? Because they have range 3 anyway.
Well, but they need a face up to do that because they have AI.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Which is the other thing that, like, I mean, aim, shoot, like with linked targeting array included, is like also not terrible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason that aims are so decent on them is because they have essentially like they're one white dice short of a Death Trooper pool. No, they don't surge.
I was going to say, sort of. They're sort of
yeah. So the other reason that face-ups on them are so important is because they really want surge tokens for that attack pool from aggressive tactics. But if they have a surge token, you give them that free aim. They don't have precise 2 either, like Death Troopers do. But it makes their pool a lot stronger. It makes a big difference. Trying both ways, but like with link targeting array and prioritizing giving them face-ups with aggressive tactics, it really makes a big difference with their fire.
105 is very competitively costed, I think, as well.
Yep.
For what they bring to the table.
Yep. A couple things with just like how to use them. I usually set them up. I actually kind of think of them a little bit like speeder bikes, but slow speeder bikes. So they can actually flank because they're pretty fast in roll mode. They're actually just as fast as a speeder bike in roll mode. Usually I set them up along a flanking line, not far from my main force, like no more than, range 1 from the end of my B1 line, but in a position where they can potentially get some more interesting angles. And then I generally, unless things get mixed up really fast, use roll mode first turn to get them into a good position. Again, not too far out ahead. You don't want them to be the only thing that your opponent has to shoot at. But you want some good angles where you can just aim shoot or, shoot move or move shoot with those suppressive guns.
We should mention that wheel mode or roll mode shuts off their shield.
It does.
Yeah. And I think as long as we're talking about wheel mode / roll mode competitively, I think it's also worthy of note. I know that there's an extra 2 models in the box to show that they're in wheel mode. If you're playing in a competitive tournament, use the token. Do not replace those models.
Yep. Yeah, like replacing models always gets weird because you're picking up a model. Now, when you're moving them, like when you're putting them into wheel mode, it's actually fine because you just put the wheel mode dude at the end of the template, and then you have it.
Yeah.
But then you need to swap them out at the end of the turn, and it
gets a little wonky.
It gets a little weird. So I would personally just use the wheel mode token. I will also say that the rolly mode droidicas are a pain in the butt to put together.
I actually, those are still all on sprues because I was like, I'm never going to use these. I'm just going to use the token, so no big deal.
Yeah, I would leave them there. Not that it's not a cool idea, but man, they were a pain in the butt. Like even more so than the standing up ones. Just think like how many pieces the standing up ones are, and then like everything is tighter and smaller and rolled up in a ball. Yeah. So just that's my recommendation anyway. And Mike's clearly just use the wheel mode token. So yeah, their shields are shut off in wheel mode, so don't do it like in a position where they're vulnerable. They do get cover 2, but you want to be using them in a situation where they're getting cover 2 anyway. Like if they're ever going to get shot, you want them to have cover 2 plus shields. And they do in fact get cover from things like barricades. So they get cover from most things that troopers do. And like any other 2-model or multi-model unit, you can use cohesion to assist that. So, dropping your second droidica behind something to get cover is definitely an important skill to develop.
Yeah, I think a good rule of thumb in regards to droidecas and wheel mode specifically is to not use it if you can get shot at.
Yep.
Like if somebody's going to fire at you, you should never use wheel mode. And never is probably a little bit too strong, but like 98% of the time, if you're going to take return fire after your activation, you should not use wheel mode.
Yep.
Unless your shields are already depleted, in which case it's a little bit of a moot point. But
and if that's the case, you're probably so close that you don't have to use wheel mode, unless you're trying to score on breakthrough or something like that.
Yeah. So, just generally, if you're gonna fire or if you're gonna like be in the middle of engaging, like you should not be using wheel mode generally.
It's also worthy to note that when you engage wheel mode, you can also use it to extract. So if you think your droidecas are low on shield and about to get blown up, you could actually enter wheel mode, then reverse at speed 2, to run behind a piece of line of sight blocking terrain and then wait a turn or wait a couple of turns to recharge your shields.
Yep.
That's definitely something I've seen done.
Yep.
Yeah. My hypothetical attack sequence goes wheel mode to line of sight block last, then on the turn start, issue orders, get the aim token, move around the corner and fire with your aim and surge.
Yep.
Totally.
Yep. Yeah. And then if you're in a safe position, stay there and keep firing. If not, back right up.
And then bug out with your reverse move, or you might not even need to wheel at that point.
Yep. Yeah, because once Droidicas lose their shields, they drop real fast.
Yeah, they're vulnerable.
I mean, they're basically rebel troopers when they don't have shields. So,
but in the meantime, their shields can't be. In the meantime, their shields can't be pierced. So, also great.
Yep. Yeah, they're really tough with their shields and really weak when they don't have them. So, that's also usually you want you don't want them to go first and then be stuck in a position where they can be shot for the rest of the turn. I usually, even if my droidicas are sort of in the mix, I usually wait until it's clear what my opponent is targeting. And if they're not targeting my droidicas, then I'll go with them. If they are, then I'll go with them and shoot and back away. Which you can afford to do if you have link targeting, right? Because you have that aim token already. So you just attack and then move. Definitely don't overestimate how tough they are, because they can fold real quick if you leave them out there.
A good way to look at it is if the shields are worth one attack.
Yep.
Right? They're gonna negate one full attack ish. So if you're put your droidecas in a position where they can take 2 full attacks, you need to understand that they're probably going to take some damage minimally.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about sort of in previous casts about Bosk, who is sort of in a similar position, right? He has a lot of health, and he has regenerate, which means he can usually eat one attack, but then you need to hide him behind something after that. And it's kind of the same story with Droider, because they can eat one attack with their shields, but once their shields are down, they'll melt real fast if you don't have them behind something. So, as far as objectives, they're good on key positions and breakthrough, because you can use a wheel mode to score with breakthrough.
I like them on intercept too.
Just because they're so good at zoning.
Yeah, they're just they kind of move up, project this range 3 bubble, suppressive bubble, and they're kind of, at least at the moment, I think they're a little intimidating.
Yep, they have a strong suppressive dice pool, so
yeah, they hit real hard. I noticed that playing for the first time as Rebels against them, I was like, oh, this deck is shooting me. Oh my god, it passed 4 hits through cover.
Yeah,
it's this is not great. Oh, I just lost half a squad. Whoops.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Seems good.
Yep. You can also use them for blocking if you're facing something like a creature trooper, tauntauns or dewbacks. You can use them to shove them in those lanes to make sure that the creature troopers can't access your B1s. They're vehicles, so they can't be engaged. So if the tauntauns charge them, then you can shoot them. So yeah, that's a very important, at least where things are right now, very important feature of Droidicas. Also.
Yeah, using them as roadblocks against creatures charging you.
Yep. All right, you guys got anything else to say about Droidicas?
If you're playing CIS, you have to take them. So play them. They're great.
Yep. Yeah, I used them last weekend, 2 weekends ago in that tournament. And there's something that you're not like, man, it's too bad I have to take a couple of these, because they're actually pretty good. So
yeah, they have a tauntaun effect, because you've got 50 droid bodies standing behind them, or however many you have, 48. So they're very threatening. So use that threat, create tension between, is my opponent going to work on chipping me down, so I don't have 40 droids on turn 6, or is he going to leave me with 2 droidicas that are mostly full? Your opponent has to choose which is the greater threat, and I think droidicas are very capable of being that threat.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on Droidicus?
No, man. I think we've covered the basics.
Sweet. Well, we do have an interview with Mr. Davis Kingsley, so let's jump. You're going to say something, or
no? I was going to say that you remember that we had an interview today, but
yeah. Yeah. Are you guys impressed that I didn't just go straight into sign off?
Well, you know.
All right. Let's do our interview with Davis. And we're back with Davis Kingsley, 2-time Invader League champion and Worlds qualifier / went undefeated at High Command last year. How are you doing, Davis?
I'm doing all right. How about you guys?
We're doing well. It is a gloomy Monday, as Mike described it already. It's getting dark earlier now that we got daylight savings. I'm sure it's not that way yet in California. So,
no, it's a little. It's not great.
I mean, you guys
by California standards, not great is like, oh no, it's like 60 degrees and there's clouds. So
doesn't have to do with the fires, though.
Yeah, not this time anyway.
No, the smoke has subsided at this phase.
Excellent.
At least where I'm at.
So this is like our quarterly Davis Kingsley interview. I feel like we have you on like every couple months or so.
Interesting. Okay. Maybe I only do something that's like relevant in this game every couple months.
Pow, pow, pow.
I think you're probably I think we've had you on more than any other individual guest at this point.
Oh yeah? I thought you guys had Brandon on a few times. Maybe I'm mixed up. I know he's done several interviews, but I'm not sure with who.
Yeah, he just makes the rounds. He's been on Jay's cast a couple times.
Oh yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Anyway, so you are in Invader League, and Eliminations has started today when we're recording this. We're recording on Monday night. We'll be well underway by the time people hear this. And you're bringing a very interesting list, which I got a chance to see in action last week against Starscream in round robin. But it's basically, well, why don't you talk about your Eliminations list for Invader League first and tell people maybe how you arrived on it and how it works.
Yeah, so I'm running it's a fairly standard list, it's in terms of like the fundamental stuff of, you have Leia, you have R2, you have 3 Tauntauns, all the Tauntauns. Leia has strict orders, all the Tauntauns have tenacity, one of them has comms jammer, one of them has HQ uplink, 2 of them have comms jammers. I think that core is like something that a lot of lists should be thinking about because R2 is really good if you have other stuff that's aggressive because he can kind of sneak in there and either score you the other point or force them to divert some attention. And you have a lot of Tauntauns that are sort of demanding that they respond to them. So it's nice to have R2 sneaking around in there. Leia, No Time for Sorrows has huge synergy with Tauntauns because it allows them to trigger reposition and agile. So they get a free move, which can include a pivot, and they get a free dodge when you do this. And so with the HQ uplink, you can use No Time for Sorrows. Leia gives orders to the 2 Jammer Tauns. The other one pops its HQ uplink. And then you have 3 Tauntaun units that start the turn with a dodge and pretty quickly can get in there and start messing stuff up. The big difference between my list and some of the lists that I was playing earlier is that I don't have any, I don't have like a core gunline element in the way that a lot of lists do. I only have 3 Rebel Troopers. They have no upgrades. I'm not running Z6s. I'm not running the new DLT heavy weapon. It's just 3 basic Rebel Troopers with no upgrades. And then I have 3 sniper teams and Chewbacca to round out the rest of the list. So it does end up being a 12 activation list. This is also strong because Tauntauns often want to stall. You can kind of do a last first thing where you're going to try to delay all your Tauntauns so your opponent doesn't get shots on them. And then at the last moment, you're going to rush in there once they've already gone with several other units. And then the next turn, you do that No Time for Sorrows and you attack aggressively. So I think this is a pretty strong list. I think the increased activation count is good. I also noticed that the Rebel Troopers with the Z6s, they're not a bad unit. They're decent, but I was noticing that against the Shore Trooper aggressive tactics, comms relay type builds, they're just not really competitive with that. I think Shore Troopers are kind of unbalanced right now. I think aggressive tactics is very unbalanced right now. I think aggressive tactics should cost like 25 points or more. You're just not, it's not going to be a very efficient trade. So because of that, I was like, what if we just ignore that side of the game completely and we take another sniper and we take Chewie? You know, that's going to add some Pierce to the list. With 3 snipers and Chewie, you're going to win the like sniper duel if it comes to that. And you have a lot of ability to go out there and do objectives with your 3 Rebel Trooper squads freed up to basically just go and hide behind things and run to the relevant places and all of that. So it's it's a pretty cool list. I think I like it. I think that it's that being said, I think that the Rebel Troopers with no heavy weapons, it's entirely possible to me that you want to take heavy weapons with the Rebel DLT, which allows you to do kind of some of your own long distance pot shots and be a little more conservative with them while still doing some damage. But I don't really know whether or not that's going to be the case. I didn't really have any test games with that weapon on Tabletop Simulator before the lists were due. They were the weapon was only implemented like yesterday or something. And because of that, I was like, I'm going to go with the list that I'm more familiar with. But I think it's entirely conceivable that a list where instead it's like Leia R2, you don't take Chewie, you have like 4 Rebel DLTs, 2 snipers, 3 Tauntauns. I think that's 11 activations, but I think it might be better. You know, it's one of those things that I would have to test out.
Yeah, and for those that don't play on TTS, TTS uses basically anything that's been like officially spoiled. So things like R2, to the extent that we have like one of his command cards, and then the specialist pack weapons to include the Rebel DLT are all legal for Invader League. So for those of you that don't play on TTS, of course you could easily proxy those things. But yeah, for TTS we use some stuff that has not been actually released yet.
Yeah, and for those who might not have seen the preview article, the Rebel DLT is 2 black dice, 1 white die, critical 1, range 4, and I think it costs 26 points, but I might have that cost wrong.
No, that's right.
No, 26 is right.
Yep.
Yeah, so for 4 points over a Z6, you have, I believe it's the same expected damage before you take critical into consideration, and critical, of course, adds significant damage. And you also have longer range, the downside being that you have fewer dice. But I don't know, I think the high upside of the Z6 is not all that much an advantage. I like the DLT as something that does a bit more damage, can do the long range shots, and it's also more reliable.
Yeah, it's just a question of whether you can find those extra 4 points per Rebel Trooper squad or not.
Yeah, that's right. And then there's also that other new Rebel heavy weapon, the shotgun thing that Chewie uses in the Solo movie.
Yep, SX-21.
Yeah, that one has like ridiculous efficiency, but it only has range 2. I think it's like 20 points and 2 red, 2 white at range 1 to 2, so it's more damage than the Z6, and it costs less, and it also has impact 1, but the downside is, of course, that you only have range 2. But if you're going to get in there, that thing is very efficient.
Yeah, and you're still throwing 5 black dice at range 3, unlike fleet troopers who are throwing no dice at range 3. So,
yeah, if it had Pierce instead of impact, I think it would just be insane. Impact is, I think, a significantly worse keyword than Pierce, but there is more armor these days, so we could see that paying off.
Seems like a nice little, maybe you need to cut 2 points for a bid or something, and you want like a quick and easy linebacker unit. Seems decent for that purpose.
Hmm.
You got any Invader League predictions?
Yeah, I mean, I did a bracket somewhere. So I think that the Invader League, it's going to be interesting. I'm actually going to go out on a limb here. I know there's been a lot of discussion of Tauntauns. I actually don't know how well Tauntauns are going to do in the league. I think they might not do as well as people expect. And the reason for that is that a lot of the Tauntaun lists, in my opinion, aren't necessarily playing to the strength of the Tauntauns. And like, no disrespect to other people's lists and so on. But my concept is very much that Tauntaun lists want to have a high activation count if possible, so that you can take advantage of your speed and kind of do a last first type thing. We're seeing some of these lists at like 10 or even 9 activations, which I think is not really the way that you want to go. I could be wrong. We'll have to see how it goes. But I was surprised both by the fact that there weren't as many lists with 2 or 3 Tauntauns as expected. I think there's 17 rebels and 10 of them have 2 or 3 Tauntauns. but I think very few of them have like what I would consider the best way to run a 3 Tauntaun list. But it's also possible that I'm wrong. So, we'll have to see how it goes.
I'll echo your sentiment and say that my experiments with 9 and 10 Tauntaun lists didn't go so hot. So I don't think you're off the mark with your statement there.
Yeah, I think Tauntauns are really strong. Don't get me wrong, but I think that the strongest configuration of them is a list that has 3 Tauntauns and at least 11 activations. And I think you really want Leia in there also because of how good No Time for Sorrows is with them, and also because she allows you to take strict orders, which is itself very useful. But I think that, not all the lists have what my preferred configuration would be. It's kind of interesting because a very high percentage of the Imperial lists are using like Shore Trooper relay abuse and aggressive tactics and stuff like that. I think almost all the Imperial lists have Shore Troopers. I'm not sure how many of them also have the relays and aggressive tactics and stuff, but I think I don't think Tauntauns are very balanced, quite frankly. But I don't know whether or not the league results are going to demonstrate that. Of course, we also had that game. I don't know which of you did you guys watch that game? The one that I streamed with the air speeders and stuff. It was Stevens versus Nema.
Yeah.
So in that game, you can watch the VOD on my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/tower9. But for those of you who haven't seen it, if you don't want spoilers, just like skip ahead by a minute or two in this podcast. But the short version is that Stevens was playing a list that had 2 airspeeders and 2 Tauntauns and an FD, and he kind of blundered with his airspeeders and FD and lost them, inflicting minimal damage. Both the airspeeders and his FD were dead early in like turn 3 or something. And despite that, his 2 Tauntaun riders like carried the game completely and gave it to him because of the bizarre situation where Tauntauns can charge emplacements and the emplacements can't withdraw. It allowed him to get stuck in there. He was doing damage. He had comms jammers disrupting Nema's stuff, and there just wasn't a lot that could be done about those Tauntauns once they got in there. And we could see a similar thing where even if the other aspects of the lists aren't that good, the Tauntauns are strong enough to carry. But I personally think that the Tauntauns aren't going to do quite as well as some might be expecting and or fearing.
Yeah, so just real quick, that emplacement rule you're referencing is when withdrawing, you can't use like any free actions or abilities, and emplacements cannot move through creature troopers. So if you engage an emplacement with a Tauntaun in its front arc, then it de facto can't withdraw because the only direction it can withdraw is forward, and it can't move into the Tauntaun that it's engaged with. So,
yep, that's an unfortunate situation. I hope that they change it. I think it's very gamey, and it's actually one of the reasons I do think Tauntauns are actually advantaged against the Shore Trooper lists that some people have been running. And one of the reasons is that the Shore Trooper mortars are like awful against Tauntauns. It's like they often don't get a chance to shoot if the Tauntauns are being run properly because of their minimum range. When they do shoot, it doesn't do all that much. Like, yes, they can suppress you, but if you have strict orders, you can take a hit from a suppressive weapon, use strict orders, and still get a full activation. And then they allow you to get stuck into combat and they can't escape, so that they can't let their, all their Shore Trooper DLT squads shoot you. Once you're in, you're in. And furthermore, the relay trick is disrupted by comms jammers. So there's just kind of it's weird. It's almost a perfect storm of those Shore Trooper mortars being countered by Tauntauns, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why you're seeing, more shoreline players running Imperial Royal Guard, so they at least have something to do about the Tauntauns when they get in there against the mortars.
Yeah, that's a strong list. Several players are running a list where it's like Krennic, aggressive tactics and strict orders, 3 units of Shore Troopers with T-21, 3 mortars with comms relays, 1 Death Trooper with the Death Trooper DLT and with the configuration and with a comms relay, and a Royal Guard with an Electro Staff, and then like 2 snipers. It's something like that. I think there might be like small differences in upgrades. But I think that's a pretty strong list. You have the three Shore Troopers are kind of like mini Death Troopers with aggressive tactics in play. You have the Death Troopers, you're a little light on like core elements, but your Imperial Royal Guard can take some hits for you, and you have those as like a countercharge element. Against the armies that are like pure gun lines, if you get your Tauntauns into melee with one of their emplacement troopers, the Tauntauns are basically safe and there's very little that they can do.
It's also worth noting that short troopers punch less hard than storms in melee, so it's compounded yet again by
that's
short
true.
troopers being what they are.
Yeah, short troopers are not only more expensive than stormtroopers, they also don't have an attack surge, so their melee attack is weaker. And furthermore, you might think that the aim would mitigate it, but if you're running comms jammer, it's infrequent that they would get a chance to get the aim. Though sometimes people are using like comms text with HQ uplinks in their short trooper units, which would allow them to nevertheless get orders even if jammed. Well, for one turn at least.
So do you want to talk real quick about, you've kind of done this to some degree so far already, but like how to run Tons, not necessarily from a list building perspective, but just from a functional in-game, like how do you use them perspective?
Yeah, that's great. So I guess there's a few things that I would say. So one thing that I'll say is that the Tauntauns have a problem that's similar to speeder bikes, which is that if you play them too aggressively, they will in fact just die. Like they're really good, but they're not invincible. And if you play them way too aggressively, they will actually just get shot and die. I think that I've seen some games where people have essentially done this. You know, they've gotten too bold with the Tauns, haven't really gotten the results that they needed, and have just gotten killed. I think that you should play them more conservatively than just like, rush in and just blow them up. But I think that you got to kind of know when you want to press in and when you want to just move up. One really important skill with Tauntauns is using cohesion to get cover. You can use cohesion to put your second model in a position where the unit will get cover, and this is really important. If you can set yourself up so that you're getting cover and you have your dodge tokens, it's pretty difficult to damage you. But if you just put your other guy in a position where he's in the open, it ends up being a lot easier to take damage. And I'm not saying I'm an expert at this. I've just noticed that being in cover does actually matter for them. It's pretty important. And they don't get cover from barricades and stuff like that. So you got to think about what sorts of positions you're going to be using. One thing I also think is that a lot of people don't use the Tauntaun guns enough. The guns on the Tauntaun riders are actually very strong. They have 2 red dice each, and they have Sharpshooter 1 and Surge to hit. So this is quite similar to a maximum firepower attack. It's a little bit worse because it does have the factor where it isn't. It does have the factor where it doesn't have impact and it doesn't have Surge to crit. But against like normal troopers, it really is a lot similar. So, you know, you can be in a position sometimes where you can be out of line of sight or in a position where you have cover or you're very difficult to shoot at. You can move out into the open, shoot somebody, and then move back into cover. So you can do that to kind of cause some problems for people. There's a tactic that I sometimes use called the caracole. This was a real military tactic that was used back in the day where if infantry had taken a formation that cavalry couldn't charge through, what they would instead do is do like wheeling maneuvers in front of the formation while shooting at them with their pistols. And this is actually like really fitting for Tauntauns. The way that this normally looks is you move forward to get in range of the enemy. At the end of that move, you pivot, you shoot the enemy, and then you do your next move where you pivot back the way you came and move back. And you end up more or less in your starting position, though you often have a different angle depending on how much turn you did. But you moved up and took a free shot at the opponent while doing that. And this can be actually quite annoying in certain circumstances.
So you're talking... Sorry,
go ahead.
Yeah, you're talking essentially about skirmishing with Tauntauns.
Yeah, I don't really know what the term skirmishing means in this context, but yeah.
I'm going to go with caracole because that's just awesome.
It sounds way cooler. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think that other things I would say about Tauntauns, tenacity is, I think, quite important on them. I know some people have run them with endurance. I prefer them with tenacity because tenacity really increases the damage that a lone Tauntaun sergeant can do by a lot. Similarly, there are some situations where, like, if I'm about to charge in, and let's say it's like no time for Sorrow's turn, my Tauntauns have a dodge token and they're in heavy cover, and they're going to be able to charge, and probably they'll be meleeed by whatever they charge or similar sorts of things, or maybe someone will try to disengage and shoot them with something else. If I'm in that situation and the Tauntauns are unwounded and someone shoots them and gets 2 wounds through cover, sometimes I will intentionally not spend my dodge token to increase the chance that I get wounded for tenacity, depending on whether or not I'm going for damage. That's like a little trick that I would recommend. And I guess the other thing that I would say about the Tauntauns is the comms jammers are extremely disruptive to some units. It's really good against the Death Trooper comms relay combo, or I'm sorry, the Shore Trooper comms relay combo. It's incredibly good against droids, because if you charge a unit of droids and you have a comms jammer, and they, if they get put on AI attack, and if they have AI attack, they can't withdraw because they have to punch you, and their punch is really bad also. So it creates an extremely disruptive situation where you get stuck in there. Further, there are sometimes so many models in droid units, especially if you don't have, if you don't actually attack them, that you can end up in a situation where, because of all the droid models piling in, they're not able to charge you with another more powerful unit.
Like
for instance, yeah, like let's say you move up with your Tauns and charge one unit, and then with your second action you move and charge a different unit that's undamaged. If that unit doesn't have, let's say that's a full droid unit with 8 guys, 8 guys piling into your Tauntauns might well mean that there is no longer a gap for Grievous or Dooku to actually charge you, which can be very detrimental to the opponent.
Yeah, especially for Grievous, Dooku could potentially use Force Push to rectify that, but Grievous doesn't have that option.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and that's another funny thing. Some people don't know this. The way that Agile works, Agile does trigger off No Time for Sorrows. Agile does trigger off of the initial move that you get in advanced positions. And ridiculously enough, Agile actually triggers if someone force pushes you. So you get a free dodge in all those circumstances.
Yeah, they actually clarified this in a recent ruling on the forum, that Agile's mandatory. So yeah, the force pushing player can't say, well, I choose not to get a dodge token here. That said, force push is still decent against them, just because you can get them out of melee in situations where you might not be.
So wait a minute. If I force push and then I serve your master well for a move, does that mean they have 2 dodges?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, that's gross.
The Agile is mandatory. I think tactical is also mandatory. I think did they rule on whether you can make them use offensive push?
I don't know. There was like a extremely
there were a bunch of let me look at the forum. There were a bunch of rulings about this on the forum.
Yeah, Serve Your Master and Vader's Might both had like extensive sections in there, which is good that they're preempting that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be. I think those are some of the things that would be most likely to cause disputes. Okay, okay. So you can exhaust upgrade cards to use effects while you're moving someone with Serve Your Master well or whatever. So if you took offensive push, you could make the opponent waste offensive push on a unit that had already activated or whatever. But not really relevant to Tauntauns, because you should probably not take offensive push on them, because RAM is insane.
Yeah, so your endurance, I think, is your
right.
Yeah,
you already have inbuilt dice fixing with RAM, so why bother with a name token at that point?
Yeah, that's right.
And you do a mix of comm jammers and uplinks as far as your comm slot's concerned with the Tauntauns?
I think the way that I like it is to take 2 comms jammers and 1 HQ uplink, because that means that on your No Time for Sorrows turn, you can give orders to the 2 jammers and then pop the HQ uplink to have No Time for Sorrows on all 3 of your Tauntauns.
So just as a final thing for Tauntauns, what like setup cards do you think are bad for a Tauntaun list?
I think that well, it kind of depends. It depends on. I think if you're taking R2, it changes the calculation somewhat, but I really do think you should take R2. I actually am not playing I'm not playing Sabotage the Moisture Evaporators, even though it does tend to favor blue player, and the reason is that Sabotage the Moisture Evaporators as blue is really good for like a gunline army or an army that wants to sit back. But for Tauntauns, that's not necessarily the case. It may surprise some people to hear that the Tauntauns do not always make their cost back. They are quite expensive, and even though they can do a lot of damage, they don't necessarily always make their price back. So you don't really want to just be throwing them in there in like points trading games. I prefer to try to get a scenario. So like recover the supplies is good because the Tauntauns can quite plausibly kill whatever they send into the center. You know, probably I wouldn't want to send them against like, you know, if they have Boba Fett or like if they have Boba Fett or Sabine with recon intel or whatever, you probably don't want to do that scenario. But even then, the Tauntauns can quite plausibly threaten their like home box carriers, depending on what else they have. Breakthrough is incredibly good for Tauntauns. They're really, really fast. And there's kind of this concept in general where I like to say that the Tauntaun player has the initiative, which is, you know, you're sort of going to dictate the pace of the game. And some people are doing this badly, and they're like, oh, the pace of the game is attack, attack, attack. I'm going to rush in there as fast as possible. And then, you know, they might well just get killed depending on situational factors. Sometimes with the Tauntauns, what you can do is be like, oh, you know, I'm not going to attack with the Tauntauns yet. I'm just going to sit here and, you know, use my snipers and stuff and shoot the opponent and stall time, and then at the end of the game, they're not going to have enough time to kill my Tauntauns and do the scenario. So I'm actually going to start attacking on like turn 3 or 4. You know, I've had some good results with this. On like key positions in particular, it's possible to just be like, okay, my Tauntauns are going to hide and then run onto the point on the last turn. And in some cases, there's really not that much an opponent can do about that.
I'll add to that as well. You can actually block your opponent from moving onto key positions with your Tauntaun bodies.
Yeah, that's true. Units cannot move through creatures. Vehicles can't move through creatures. Other troopers can't move through creatures. Only repulsor vehicles can move through creatures. Or I guess jump units also can. I think, did they rule that? It's clearly intended, but I don't know if there's actually a ruling that confirms that it's allowed.
I think that one
doesn't really matter.
The most recent form thing.
Yeah. I think jump does let you go through, but...
that was in the most recent clarifications. Yes, you can jump over creatures. Anyway, you can screen off most things, including vehicles and including opponents' creatures using the Tauntauns. You can do some fun things with cohesion since you do have 2 models in the unit. That's actually one of the better counters to Tauntauns, by the way, is blocking. I think that some of these lists that you see from Rebels where they're fielding a bunch of ATRTs, it is actually fairly strong in that you can use the ATRTs to try to physically block the Tauntaun's paths to your more vulnerable units. One tip that I would say if you are playing Tauntauns is that in general, charging vehicles is dangerous. Simply, if you're doing it like at the end of the turn, it can be fine. But the problem with charging vehicles is that vehicles don't get locked in combat. So if even if you're in base contact with a vehicle that's already activated, the rest of their units can still shoot you. And usually that's not where you want to be.
Yeah, plus if they're a walker, they have a melee weapon usually.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, you got any other quick hits for folks that want to play Tauntauns?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. I think that I think as it stands, I consider Tauntauns kind of the meta-defining unit, which is to say that I think that basically no matter what faction you're playing, you should know what you're going to do against Tauntauns. Like, what's your plan for dealing with them? There are some armies, like even in the Invader League and stuff, where I'm just like, I don't think this list has any way to answer Tauntauns. And if they play against 3 Tauntauns, they're probably just going to lose. But that doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case. You know, we've seen some of these other lists that have ATRTs to block the Tauntauns. We were mentioning earlier lists that are taking Imperial Royal Guard as like a countercharge element, various other things like that. I do think that... I don't think that the meta is Tauntauns only, but I think it's important to either, know what you're doing about Tauntauns or be playing Tauntauns yourself, so to speak.
Yep, build in a Tauntaun counter if you're not using them.
Yeah, and if you do want to use them, I think they're actually. So it's sort of weird because I don't think Tauntauns are balanced. I think they're considerably too strong right now. Like I'll just say that frankly. But I also think that the Tauntaun, like the list that I'm using, feels a lot more like a Rebel list, like conceptually, than some of the old lists. Like if you look at the old Wonder Twins list, which was basically one of the best armies for a while. The Wonder Twins list doesn't feel that much like the Rebellion, like conceptually. In fact, it's basically a gun line where it's just like, oh, okay, well, Z6 troopers are better than stormtroopers, so. If I fight an Imperial gun line, I can actually just shoot it out with them and try to use Luke to get some results over there or whatever. It's very like head to head. The Tauntaun list, in my opinion, is less head-to-head. It's more like, oh, you know, I have these snipers, and especially the one that I have that doesn't even have super heavy weapons. It's like, oh, you know, I have these snipers, I have these Tauntauns, you know, I have a lot of mobility. I can pick at my opponent and try to wear them down. I can make attacks in areas that they might not be expecting. You know, I can kind of play that game. And that's you know, that's an interesting thing, and it feels more like the Rebellion than the previous lists. However, I do think the Tauntauns are too good. I'm hoping that, you know, if and when some changes are made, they will keep this style of list as something that Rebels can do, while hopefully making it not as extreme. I also think that, I don't know if you guys are going to have anybody on to talk about this, but I also think shore troopers are broken, especially with aggressive tactics. So my hope is for mutual disarmament, where both Tauntauns and shore troopers are nerfed at the same time.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be hard to do one without doing the other.
Yeah, I think if you take Tauntauns out of the meta and don't do anything about shore troopers, the best armies are just immediately shore trooper gun lines. And I mean, we're seeing, like, even with Tauntauns in the meta, and Tauntauns being, in my opinion, a strong counter to shore troopers, we're still seeing a lot of shore trooper gun lines in the Invader League. So it'll be interesting to see how that ends up turning out. Oh, I actually, sorry, I know I've been a little disjointed with this. One other thing that I'll say about the cards, the like pre-battle cards, you really, really want to avoid Long March. Long March is quite bad for Tauntauns. And the reason is, with their high mobility, it's quite good to be doing like flanking maneuvers and going around the sides and stuff like that. Long March gives you a lot less room to maneuver, and it makes you a lot more head-to-head. I'm not going to say that Tauntauns are bad head-to-head, but often some of their best results can be when you can catch a unit that isn't supported as well and pick something off on the side and sort of kill that unit for free, and then like kind of keep going. And if it's on Long March, they have a much higher ability to concentrate their stuff against your Tauntauns.
Yeah, and that's always been true even against like speeder bikes. You know, speeder bikes have a somewhat similar play style, not as in your face effective as Tauntauns, but as far as like wanting to have deployments that stretch out your opponent's army.
Yeah, I sort of want to make, it would be cool to make some kind of lists where you had like both Tauntauns and Pathfinders and stuff, but I have not made such a list yet. You could probably make it by just like, I don't know, maybe you don't take Chewie and you swap one of the snipers in my current list for a Pathfinder unit. You might end up with some points left over though. I'd have to mess around with it.
Yeah, that does seem like it would be fun, but Pathfinders are expensive.
Yeah. Anyway, I quite like this. I quite like the kind of, you know, rebel play style of this, where you're picking at people from a lot of different directions. I think without, I don't know, you know, we'll have to see what happens. I personally think Tauntauns are a lot of fun to use, but I also recognize that they're probably too strong at present, so it's going to be interesting to see where they go as the game evolves.
Yeah, they're definitely on theme for Rebels. Hopefully they can stay that way.
Plus, the models look great.
Yeah, they really do. All right. Well, thank you, Davis, and good luck in Invader League. Luckily, you and I are in separate parts of the bracket this time, so if we're both successful, we'll hopefully be meeting sooner than like round 3, which I think is when we ended up facing each other last time.
Yeah, I think we can only even, like, I think if we both win out completely, then we play each other in like the semifinal.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, perhaps I'll see you there.
Yeah, we can both hope, right?
Yeah.
I'm running something a little different. We'll see. See if
your list is very different from mine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be interested to see. Can I ask you stuff about your list? Is that on theme?
No, that's fine. Yeah.
All right, dude, bro. What's up with the Z6s? Like, I've seen your list, and I think the theme of it is cool. I think it's kind of a classic. Like, it's like Wonder Twins, except you don't have Leia and instead you have Operative Luke. But I was struck by the fact that I would run a similar list with the DLT-20 instead of the Z6. I think it would actually add a lot to this style of list. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Yeah,
I sort of agree with you. The trouble is, like, I would have had to cut a couple of things to fit in DLTs. And I also hadn't used them a lot. So...
yeah, I think I think when I saw that list, I made my own version. I think it's basically you have 4 DLT rebels instead of 5 Z6 rebels, but then you also have R2, and then there was something else, but I forget what it was.
Yeah, basically you're cutting like a Rebel Trooper Z6 to upgrade the other ones to DLTs, and then you throw something else in there to make up the difference.
Yeah. You could do other stuff where like you could drop the FD and take R2 and then upgrade them to DLTs, and then you have like some amount, I don't know, you take an officer or a medic or something.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the short answer to that question is I took what I know.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think play what you know is a good principle, but I also think the Rebel DLT is going to be sick. Then again, you know, I myself was in the position where I was like, oh, this Rebel DLT list looks good, but I've played 0 games with it, so like, yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's just, you know, ultimately I went with something very similar to what I'm used to playing. I don't get a lot of time for practice games, so
yeah.
Although I do have obviously last season I went in cold with a totally new faction, but at least
I'm just that worked pretty well for you.
Yeah, I'm not quite brave enough.
I'm just not fond. I don't know, man. I'm just not fond of the lists where I'm like, oh man, Luke has got to roll good saves. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to be in that position. You know,
yeah.
And if anyone can carry a game on his back, it's Jedi Luke. But
oh yeah,
you're right. I'm going to live and die by those Jedi Luke red saves. That's for sure.
Yeah, that was actually when Tauntauns first came out. The thing that I was most excited about them with was actually like, oh, you know, I can play Tauntauns and I can actually run this as a, I can run these Tauntaun riders and I can take 2 of them to replace Luke in like a Wonder Twins list because I prefer having like multiple less powerful units to like the one big centerpiece where if he does unlucky, you're doomed. But then I found that the Tauntauns were so good that what I really wanted was 3 of them and no Luke. But like 2 Tauntauns instead of Luke, that was what I was starting off at. And then I was like, you know, these are really good.
Yeah, Luke definitely lives.
I'm going to be interested though. You know, Jedi Luke's very, maybe you don't want to tell me this. Are you running 6 Luke's command cards?
Yeah, I mean, if we play each other by the time you figure that out, or by the time we do that, that'll be clear. I'm running all 6 of his cards. So
nice. Yeah, I mean, that's what I would do with that list, quite frankly. It's just like, all right, man, let's go.
Yeah, I've actually found, I mean, people talk about cutting I Am a Jedi, but I've actually found that to be a really good card. I used him in round robin quite a bit. And I had one game where he made no attacks the entire game and he won me the game.
Yep.
So
I think that it's totally fine to have 1 or even 2 like fairly situational cards because often standing orders is the first turn anyway.
Yep.
And so that means that essentially across the course of 6 games, you'll have 1 leftover card. And I think that's completely fine. I mean, you know, and there's arguments where it's like, oh, you know, maybe you only want to have 1 of them but a lot of games are also decided before 6 turns. So it's kind of complicated.
Yep, totally.
I personally think that the all Luke command cards is pretty sweet though.
Yeah, it's, I love it thematically, but he's also got really good command cards. So
yeah. It's on theme and it's actually strong. Yep. That's a good combo.
All right. Well, thanks, man. Good luck. I hope that I see you in the semifinal.
Yeah. Good luck to you too.
It'll be a few weeks till we know whether that's going to happen or not. But
yeah. But no, that would be pretty hype.
Agreed.
Also, I think I'm favored against your list, so that's really hype.
Yeah. Part of answering the question about my list also is it's sort of a thought experiment. My goal is to find out if Jedi Luke can handle triple Tauntauns basically by himself. I think the answer is probably no, but I'd like to find out. So,
yeah, I mean, my view is also that the answer is going to be no, just to, you know, put my cards on the table or whatever. But I think that Jedi Luke is really cool thematically, and I hope he does end up doing well for you because I think that would be like a good sign for the game if a bunch of different styles of lists can be effective.
Yep, that's basically my goal. I'm going to find that out. All right. Well, thanks, man.
All right, man. Sweet. Yeah. I'll catch you later.
So that was Davis Kingsley, and we wish him luck in Invader League. I actually picked him in my bracket.
to beat you?
Yeah, I think so.
Nice. Well, his list is objectively better.
I don't know about that, but I definitely think that it's advantage versus mine.
Okay. All right.
Let's put it that way. I think
Mike believes he's favored to overcome you.
Yeah, that's right. That's what he said. So I agree actually with him. But we'll see.
Dang it, Kyle! I picked you in my bracket. Don't let me down.
I mean, we also talked with Davis. We'd have to. It's all the way like the semifinal where we even see each other. So I'm going to take it one game at a time. I'm hoping to get to play more than one. So we'll see.
All right.
I don't feel as good this season. Anyway, any final thoughts?
Nope. No final thoughts other than Kyle is a liar. Can we name the episode that? Kyle is a liar. That's all I want the episode to be named. Jay, make it happen.
We got to at least turn that into a Star Wars quote somehow.
Yeah, your thoughts betray you. There you go.
Like that. There you go. Yeah. All right.
No, you know what it is? This is how Liberty dies.
I'm sorry, Jay.
That's the quote. This is how Liberty dies.
We can cut that. I wasn't talking. It's fine. Where were we? Signing off. All right.
Yep.
All right. I'm Kyle. We're the Notorious. Damn it. We're the Notorious. All right. Just patch in a different sign off.
This is how Liberty dies to thunderous lies. Let's go.
All right, take 3. We are
Goodbye, guys. My name's Mike.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
I'm David.
And I'm Kyle.
And we're the Notorious Scoundrels.
There you go.
Just in case anybody didn't know.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.
Join us next week for another episode of the Notorious Scoundrels.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.